Obviously, this blog post comes in the form of a video, and there's a reason for this. Right now on YouTube and all throughout Facebook, there's a video that's gone viral. It's entitled "Why I Hate Religion and Love Jesus." And it's really well done. The young man's very creative. It's well filmed, good music. It's in the form of a rap, and he says a lot of things that I agree with. But I think he only offers half the story, and so I thought it was worth giving a response. The question is, can you love Jesus and hate religion at the same time? And the answer is yes and no. Anything that is an expression that comes from the heart of man that is intended to find a way to please God in our own strength is false religion. Paul calls it another gospel in Galatians 1. And the reason for this is that it is oppressive. It comes from this notion that we can somehow conjure up enough goodness in us to make God happy with us. And it is really born of the fear that God doesn't really like us, that he doesn't like us, but that if we keep the rules, he has to let us into heaven. And so it causes people to live in this constant dread and guilt and shame, and to go to bed at night wondering if enough of their sins are forgiven, or if enough of their actions are good enough for God to still be happy with them. And that's no way to live. It's painful. And as I said, it's oppressive. It flows out of the heart of man. It's very natural to think in those terms. And Paul addresses this in Acts chapter 26. He talks about his own religion and how he kept to the strictest form of it. And this was before he really knew Christ. And then in James 1, James says that anything that is hypocritical in nature is really false religion. He uses the example of someone that doesn't bridle his own tongue, but deceives his own heart. And he says this is worthless religion. And this is what we sometimes see in the church and are very sad about. And I think this young man addresses really well. When the church uses guilt to force its members to be more involved, when it makes someone feel bad for caring for their family in order to serve as a leader or something like that, when it is oppressive at the expense of the needs of its people, that's false religion. And it has no place in the gospel, and it's to be hated, as this video wisely points out. But there's another religion that the Bible talks about, and it's found in James 1:27. And what James says is that this is the religion that God the Father likes. It's considered pure and undefiled. And that is when we are moved to care about and to visit the orphans and the widows in their affliction. That's pure and undefiled religion. And James says, when we remain unstained from the world, that's pure and undefiled religion. And he's not saying that perfection equals pure religion. What he's saying is that we prevent ourselves from being stained by the world by actually admitting that we struggle with who we are. And I think this young man says that as well. When we are willing to acknowledge the reality of our brokenness and weakness, when we are willing to admit the truth of our own inner struggles, and to recognize that it cuts all the way to our hearts and our intentions and our motives, then we are practicing true religion, because that is a religious expression that flows not from the heart of man, but from the heart of God. We couldn't come up with it if we wanted to invent it, because everything we invent is about earning it and about meriting and about being promoted to something. But the gospel alone presents a God who humbled himself, a God who became like one of us. And so when our practice reflects that, then what we find is that Jesus not only loves that religion, but he is that religion. Jesus is true religion. Jesus is the embodiment of those who are compassionate for the weak, and those whose hearts break for the broken, and those who don't look down on others because they're in a different place in life, and those who don't see themselves as more important because they're involved in a local church or a local ministry, or they give their money to the church in some form or fashion. The practice of true religion is the ministry of Jesus. It's the imitation of Christ, as Akempa said. And it is nowhere more beautifully seen and demonstrated than at the cross of Christ. And it will be no more celebrated than in the new heavens and the new earth, when together at the feast we share with the one who has awaited us, Jesus, who has made all things new. This is the truth and the practice and the realization and fulfillment of true religion that the Father loves. And that's the gospel. It's good news. It's good news for us, we unfinished ones who live in the reality of our imperfections every day. And that's a wrap.